Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. It's Russell with Ink and Paper Blog. How are you doing today? Happy Tuesday. I hope your week has started really well and that you are having a fantastic reading time. I am coming today to do another read and reviewed. 3 more books that I have read in 2019 that I want to tell you about. And actually, 2 of these I am going to be raving about. So get ready, get out your pen, get out your paper, get out your Goodreads, because I really want you guys to read these books. So let's get started. Let's not hold back. The first book I want to tell you about is Phaedra Patrick's The Library of Lost and Found. This was sent to me by Park Row Books and is out on March 26, 2019. So next week. This is the story of Martha Storm. Martha is a librarian in a small town where she grew up. She had returned home to take care of her parents as they died. They have since died, and she is sort of her own independent person. In a way, Martha is one of those people that says yes to everything everyone asks her to do. So her life is really dictated by other people, including her sister, who is more of a domineering type personality, and this man who runs the library where she volunteers will not hire her, but cannot run the library without her. You know what I mean. What happens one day is that a man delivers a book to the door of the library for Martha that is said to have been written by her grandmother. And what is sort of the mystery is the date of the signature. It's been signed and dedicated to her is 3 years after she's been told her grandmother had died. So the date doesn't make sense. So Martha goes on to an investigation into what happened and how this book came into existence. Not only that, this book is a collection of fairy tale type stories that Martha wrote for her grandmother and or her grandmother told her when she was young. And what this does is this causes Martha to sort of take stock of her life and decide whether or not she's going to continue to allow others to dictate what her life is, or if she's going to finally sort of take a moment to figure out what she wants in life. There is a bookseller that is the one who dropped off the book for her. Her and his relationship become a dynamic. She goes on the hunt. Is her grandmother still alive? Is her grandmother dead? How did this book come into existence? This book is about a woman and her grandmother. And you guys know how important my grandmother is to me. So there was a lot of this book that just touched me in so many ways. And when we learn about what her grandmother did for her as a child and really the impact that her grandmother had on her life, sorry, getting a little teary-eyed, it really just touched me. I mean, the book is just, I always say, I read 1 book a year that is a hug for the heart. So far this year, The Library of Lost and Found is my hug for the heart. When I finished the last page, I just felt good inside. And it's a story about people, and I loved every page. So if you were a fan of The Keeper of Lost Things, if you were a fan of The Reluctant Fortune Teller, if you are a fan of A Man Called Ove, if you're a fan of books like that, this is a book for you. This is the book that you can just get lost in. You can follow her as she solves this mystery. You can just fall in love with her. You can fall in love with her grandmother Zelda. You can fall in love with just this sort of coming of age. It is never too late in life to figure out who and where you want to go. And that's what this book is about. And I absolutely adored it and cannot recommend it highly enough. And it literally makes me tear up thinking about it in all the right ways. So that is Phaedra Patrick's The Library of Lost and Found. It is out on March 26, 2019. Please read it and let's talk about it. Okay, the next book that I'm going to tell you about is the 9th book from the Women's Prize long list that I have read. I said in my last video that I have not done a video where I went through the long list. I know there were a lot of those videos out here. I am going to do a video once I've done reading all of them. I had read 8 when the list came out, 8.5. I'm halfway through Lost Children Archive, but I needed to put on a little bit of hold because it wasn't the right time for me to read it, but it's brilliant. It really is brilliant. So the next one I read was Number 1 Chinese Restaurant by Lillian Lee. This is the story of a man and his family who own a Chinese restaurant, but he at the start of the book has decided that he wants to do something different. So there's this scheme in the works to open a high-scale restaurant on the water. This book takes place in Maryland, I want to say. Yeah, Rockville, Maryland. And basically what we do is, and what we get is a view of the people that work at this restaurant, the servers, the management staff, also the family that runs it, and how they got there. And then there's this other character, this uncle, one of those uncles in quotes, not really related, but everyone calls him uncle, who has more of a seedy past, who was supposed to help with getting the funding to move this restaurant over and start the new one. I don't talk bad about books very often. Someone asked me, is there any books that you don't like? I didn't dislike this book. This book just, to me, was extremely average. It didn't, the thing it does that I haven't seen done in a lot of novels is the whole entire cast, this whole entire dynamic of this one restaurant, all of these people that have worked in this Chinese restaurant for their whole life, and sort of how that all connects together. It was interesting, kind of. But the thing is, most of the plot you have read before. Most of the factors of the book will not surprise you. Some of the stuff that happens is rather absurd. And I just was not connected. And the idea that this book made the long list, I can't figure out why. So this is probably the harshest critique I've given in a long time for a book on my channel. And I normally only read books that I want to read, so I'm reading stuff that I'm really into. And I wanted to read The Woman's List, and I really wanted to like this book because I had bought it ages ago. But it's just pedestrian, and it just didn't do anything to really excite me in any way, shape, or form. And that's all I have to say. It may be a book that you love. It may be. You may get really lost in sort of the dynamics of this restaurant. You may connect with some of the characters. To me, it's just everyone was a bit flat and the story was a bit predictable. Yeah, so that's Number 1 Chinese Restaurant by Lillian Lee. I do love her. I love her on Twitter, and she is a bookseller at Literati Bookstore in Ann Arbor, Michigan, which is a bookstore, a little bookstore that is freaking fantastic. I highly recommend you go there. I am always supportive of young writers. This is her debut novel, but just this didn't work for me. It just didn't work for me. So, Number 1 Chinese Restaurant by Lillian Lee. So then I have to go and I have to do a book that I love, because I cannot do a video where the last book I talk about I didn't care for. This is The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. This was a buddy read with the amazing Kendra Winchester. We're actually still sort of finishing our comments on it. Once we're done with this, I'm going to be listening to her comments and responding. The Poppy War is a fantasy novel set in an Asian-type continent, about a young girl named Rin, who is a war orphan who has been forced to live with a family after her family has been killed, who is deals opium on the black market. At the very start of the book, it's been told that she is going to be married off, and the only way she can get out of it is she can test into a school. Every year they do this test for kids that turn 16, and the idea is you pass the test, you get into sort of college where you can learn to be a warrior, a doctor, or something like that. There's a lot to love about that. But what she does is she decides 2 years before that she is going to pass this test, get into the most exclusive university to become a general in the army, and she starts studying, and it is no surprise, guys, no surprise, it's in the blurb, she gets into this school. But when she gets there, she realizes a couple things. One, there are only 3 women in, so it's very much a patriarchal society. She is a different skin tone because she's from a different part of the country than most of the rich people who have really just all this money to pour into their family test taking to get into the school. And she also comes from a socioeconomic background that's very different than the people that are attending this school. There are different classes. She has to take a martial arts class, history, logistics, and then there's also this class called lore, which is, I'll let you guys read it and learn about it. It's really interesting. But you also learn about sort of the myth making that made this country what it was. It's currently ran by the Empress. The Empress was one of 3 beings that sort of saved this country from the last Poppy War when another country tried to invade it. What happens is the first part of the book is sort of very much she's at the school, the dynamic of her with her classmates, and then an invasion happens. There's a second and third part after that happens. And then it sort of just picks up pace. It becomes very much a plot-driven novel where we have a war going on. What is her role in it? She joins a group that are sort of these people that have these special powers, and they are sort of frowned upon but necessary. They've been used for many years as sort of the assassins for the Empress, and now they're part of the war. There's all sorts of stuff in this. There is, let me just put my book down for a minute. There's a lot to be said about sexism in this book, and the fact the main character makes a choice about her own gender that is very interesting. I do not want to spoil it, but it really changes the dynamic of the book and the tone, which I thought was a really interesting discussion point. It deals with also with this idea of who is really the people you go to when you need something, and how often societies and or countries discount those in a minority position when really a lot of the country cannot survive without it. There is also this mythic religious aspect. There's this magic where you can be, the gods can come and they take people over, but it can go too far. And what do you do? How do you make those decisions? What makes you a good person? What makes you a bad person? You're in war. What the decisions of war? There's so much to be said. The hard part with a fantasy novel like The Poppy War is I can tell you to read it. I can tell you a little bit about it. But because it's so plot driven, I don't want to give anything away, because there are many a moment in the book in and of itself where I was like, oh, okay. There's great sort of war scenes. If you like that sort of fighting stuff, there's great character building. There's great magic. My thing about fantasy novels is that I can never get lost in the world building, so much so that I forget that a story is being told. R.F. Kuang does an amazing job of building the world as the plot is going along, so you never get sort of sidetracked. I cannot wait for book 2. I am so excited. I want to thank Kendra so much for recommending this as a book buddy read. It was worth every page. I really was just flying through the last 2 sections. And yeah, highly recommend. So this is another read and reviewed. 3 more books to tell you about. And there you go. There they are. Highly recommend. All of my people that know me. You guys know me. Please read The Library of Lost and Found by Phaedra, and also The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang, and then tell me about it, because I absolutely love them. As always, if you are a return subscriber, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. If you're new to my channel, I hope all of these books wind up on your TBR. And until next time, I wish you happy reading, and I'll see you later. Bye!